Here's Joseph in the Bible. Joseph is a prince in his own right in his country. His father is Jacob. He was the second to the youngest son of all the boys. He was favored by his father, and his other brothers were very jealous of him. So they tried to figure out a way to get rid of him. And they end up betraying him, throwing him in a pit. They wished to kill him, but one of the brothers talked him out of it. And they sold him as a slave to Egypt. So not his country, not Israel. He's sold into Egypt, where they worship other gods, where they have odd customs compared to these people's customs. This is a completely different territory. And from a young age, he's made into a slave. He's very handsome. One of the rulers, one of the people, he's his master. His wife tries to seduce him, and he would not dishonor God. He still had his God. He still had his integrity. He wouldn't sleep with this woman. So she cried out rape and lied about him, and he ends up in prison. He ends up getting favor everywhere he goes. When he was in the master's house, before the woman tried to seduce him, he was favored. He was, the top of the line of the servants. When he goes into the prison system, favor was on him there. God made sure he had favor. And the jailer put him in charge of much. And so again and again, he walks with integrity. Again and again, he will not dishonor his God. No matter what comes at him, he won't dishonor God. And so temptations come to the believer to not walk with that integrity, to take an easy way out. Maybe somebody would have thought that lady would have been their meal ticket out of bondage, out of slavery, or to compromise somehow in the jail system because everybody favors him. There's many things that Joseph could have done, but he chose not to because he had great integrity. He wasn't going to go sleep with somebody who wasn't his wife. He wasn't going to sleep with somebody who somebody trusted him. His master trusted him with everything he had, including his wife. When he was a jailer, he did right. He made things run well. Things were smooth for the main jailer because he was there, because God's favor was on his life. He could interpret dreams. He was prophetic. He could tell people what it meant, and they forgot him. They forgot all about him, and he was there for so many years as a slave, as a servant, and he kept doing the right thing even though he was put in a lowly place, right? But God knows the day you're going to come out of that pit. God has ordained the day when they will recognize you. When they will recognize you because you've walked with integrity, because you've done the right thing when you could have done the wrong thing, when you could have walked like everybody else, but you chose the right way, the right path. God says that's blessable. That's an honorable life. That's a blessable life. And God is watching you. He watches everything we do. The Bible says he looks throughout the earth to see whose heart is turned toward him. God watches us. And he sees the secret things you do, whether good or bad. The Bible says so. So Joseph did the right thing when nobody was looking except for God. He kept the integrity. He kept that intact. He had a character inside of him that was blessable. And what did God do? There was a problem in Egypt. There was a problem because the king was getting nightmares. Pharaoh was getting nightmares, and nobody could interpret his dreams. But God called up Joseph, a slave, a prisoner, and he could rightly interpret the dream prophetically. He even told the king what his dream was. Because he did the right thing and kept doing the right thing, God raised him up. Where no one else would, God raised him up. And what happened? He went from slave and lowly, and God brought him up, and the king, the Pharaoh, made him second in charge of all of Egypt. And really, they were rulers in the whole world during that time because there was a great famine. He fixed the king's problem of this great famine that was going to come. He was wise. He was business wise. He helped the king make things work well. Right? Because he had favor from God. He had wisdom from God. He was blessable by God. And God made him ruler of much. As a matter of fact, the very people who had wished him dead, who had thrown him into that pit and meant harm against him, he even became ruler over them. His brothers had to come to him for help because they were starving in their land, and he had the ability to kill them. He had the ability to take all from them like they did him, and he chose to give them grace. When he got to the top, he gave them grace, and he even took care of their families. He took care of his elderly father. He did the right thing. So living the right way, even though you don't see it, even though you don't see the benefits of it right now, you need to know that the God in heaven who you serve has seen. And surely he will bless you at the right time. So don't give up. Don't be discouraged. Know that God has seen you, and he has seen that you've taken the harder road, the road that leads to him. He saw you doing it, and he is going to bless you in the end.